Welcome to Just Energy Radio with your host, naturopath and medical intuitive, Dr. Rita Louise. We have learned from Einstein's theory that matter and energy are one. Physicists believe that all systems in nature have their own particular way of vibrating. From the swinging of a pendulum to the waves of the ocean to the light that brightens the sky each day, each of these oscillates at its own unique rate. The same holds true for every thought, feeling, event, or word we speak. Each has its own frequency or rate of vibration. What many of us don't realize is when we take everything in our universe down to its simplest form, it is all just energy. Join Dr. Rita Louise on a journey through time and space where past, present, and future collide. Today, what you believe may be called into question. What we want to know is, who made up the rules? Be brave and step outside the box. We are about to turn our world upside down and venture into the unknown. Hold on. We are departing our own beliefs and entering alternative realms. Enjoy the possibilities.
Hello and welcome to Just Energy Radio. I'm your host, Dr. Rita Louise, and thank you all for tuning into the show today. Both of them are so eclectic in the information that they know and speak on that I'm going to try to focus on one or two topics, and I don't know, it'll be interesting. Anyway, in the first hour, we're going to be speaking to Robert Morningstar about UFOs, government cover-up, and the soul. And in the second hour, we're going to be speaking with Richard Allen Miller about alternative agriculture. But Just Energy Radio is brought to you by soulhealer.com, where you can learn about all the products and services I offer, including medical intuition evaluations, intuitive counseling, and energy medicine healing. So if there's stuff going on in your life, have a problem at work, a problem in a relationship, a health issue going on, give me a call, drop me a note. We can set up a time for a session by the phone, in person, or even by Skype. And it's also brought to you by the Institute of Applied Energetics. And I have a very important announcement. I think over the last few weeks, you've heard me talk about how we've released our new Jumpstart Your Intuition free 50-page guide to getting your intuition on track. Well, we've been just so excited with the feedback that we've gotten for this new program that we have decided to take the entire training program, so the entire medical intuition, energy medicine training program, and all of its little subgroups, and they're all on sale right now till the end of the month. So please go to appliedenergeticsinstitute.com, where you can find the link that says training on soulhealer.com, and it'll get you there too. You know, all roads lead to soulhealer.com. Anyway, a couple of other little teeny announcements. May 17th is the Granbury Expo in Granbury, Texas. August 16th is the Ancient Mysteries International Conference in Collinsville, Illinois. And then September 16th is Dash Beardley Wake the Dead Conference in Galveston, Texas. So be there or be square. Anyway, let me tell you a little about my guest and get him on the air. Robert D. Morningstar is a civilian intelligence analyst and therapist in New York City. He is a specialist in photo interpretation, analysis, and computer imaging, and associate editor of UFO Digest magazine. Robert has studied the paranormal and UFOs for over 40 years and has published many research articles on the internet exposing government cover-up and the deception in the JFK assassination and the use of disinformation technology in suppressing evidence of extraterrestrial life. Now, you wonder why. There's just way too much to talk about. But please welcome to Just Energy Radio from UFOdigest.com, Robert Morningstar. Hi, Robert. How are you?
Hello, Doctor. I'm fine. Good to hear you.
Well, you know, I was just so excited that you agreed to, come on to the show. You know, I'm good friends with UFO Digest. And I'm like, I think I'm just going to ask Robert if he wants to come on. And I was just so honored and thrilled that you accepted my invitation.
Thank you very much.
We're getting to know each other, and it's all good.
Yeah, I'm equally honored. I love addressing the public on important issues, and everyone that you mentioned is an important one in our lives. I'm really happy to hear the name of your sponsor, Soul Healer, because I believe that that's what I do, that my work does do that, heals souls. And so hearing the truth, understanding the truth is, excuse me a moment. I'm having an interruption right now. Okay, just got rid of it.
Okay.
So I was saying, soul healing is the purpose of my work is to heal body, mind, and soul and spirit. My work in psychotherapy involves a physical aspect of adjusting the mind by adjusting the body. Balance the body, balance the mind. So thank you for inviting me. I'm happy to speak to you and your audience on any of the subjects that you've mentioned, and we can start anytime.
Okay. And you were mentioning, the healing aspect, but I think even digging into understanding what our truth is and understanding the truth of our reality, whether it's investigating government cover-ups or investigating UFOs or investigating the soul, all lead to us experiencing freedom, personally and in our lives collectively.
Sure, I agree. And as far as freedom is concerned, I believe in freedom of information, and that's the most important thing for us to pursue in government, because no population can make the proper decision based on false information. And I think that our entire society has gone a wayward path historically and socially, having followed a path of lies that began, quite frankly, with Lyndon Johnson and the Warren Commission. That altered our society in every single way, from interpretation of law to the interpretation of criminal evidence to medical evidence and witness testimony. All of it was altered. Medicine, law.
So are you talking about what happened with the JFK assassination?
Oh, yes, how the cover-up was pulled off successfully by applying methods of disinformation technology. This is what I mean. People don't understand the term. Everyone understands disinformation, but disinformation technology is a methodology, how-to book, how to fool the public. They call it spin now. And you see, they use a trite word like spin. It sounds better. You just said it. You see, it makes people giggle, and they think it's kind of funny to spin. Spiders spin. Let's think about that. Spinning comes
and it's
from spiders.
The web,
and it's the web that catches the victim, and then the spider eats the victim. I can't imagine a more apt metaphor than what you brought up when you said spin. Well, that's precisely it. We have to stop spinning the truth. And my work in the JFK assassination, for example, I dismantled the deception. I dismantled the lie, the visual lie that is the Zapruder film. The Zapruder film is a consciously engineered mass hallucination. It is,
and so just hang on one second.
Sure.
So the Zapruder film is the one that you see in all the movies and on the anniversary of JFK, correct?
Yes, the principal film where you see the president's head exploding and Jackie trying to escape the car. Well, I dismantled that, and I used time and motion studies and still frame studies and body mechanics to show that the film is it's Mickey Mouse. Literally, it's an animation. More than 10 feet of film were removed from the film. And quite simply stated, I don't want to get into the JFK too much, but for the audience, I don't want you to be fooled by the Zapruder film ever again. I'm going to say that 10 feet of film were removed because the real Zapruder film would have shown the president hit from behind, from in front, twice from the grassy knoll, and almost 3 times from the back. 1 between the shoulder blades, 2 to the head, and from the grassy knoll. And in order to force true the magic bullet theory, all the time, the interval of time between the arrival of bullet 1, bullet 2, bullet 2, bullet 3, bullet 3, bullet 4, and so on, those were clipped and they were joined. And so you reduce 5 bullets to 2. 3 shot, 1 missed, and 2 supposedly do all the damage. It's a total contrivance, the biggest lie, actually. I think it's, when you talk about the big lie, I think the Zapruder film is the biggest lie the world has ever seen, and it has fooled the entire world, and did so until 1992 when when I debunked it. So I'm very proud of that. And
Okay.
the same with
Wait.
UFO. It's a methodology for bringing forth the truth, like what's on the moon, NASA
Well,
photographs
and kind of
of
jumping
rockets.
over to the UFO part, one of the things that I believe is that, well, other than have been being controlled by the government for forever, there was a big change with the whole Roswell incident and the early UFO stuff. But it just seems, not meaning to go back to the JFK situation, but that it became more ingrained in politics with JFK.
Well, let me digress. I said I didn't want to get into it, but I do want to point out that the death of JFK had a lot to do with UFOs. Tremendous
Okay,
amount to do with
tell.
UFOs. Yeah, yes, of course. JFK had learned about the Roswell incident in 1947 as a member of Congress. He was briefed by a member of the staff of the Secretary of the Air Force, who was Stuart Symington at that time. And just to jump and show you relationships, the governor of Arizona when the Phoenix Lights happened was Governor Symington, who was the nephew of Stuart Symington. So there's a family affair in the government control of UFOs. John F. Kennedy is cited in something called the Interplanetary Phenomenon Unit Report. These were the people who recovered the Roswell material, and it's the actual Army intelligence report with 14 points on it about what they found, how they found it, how many bodies, the other body parts that they found in the craft, the suicides of 2 of the MPs, the deaths of 3 doctors from contamination, some kind of virus that they or bacteria that they contacted during the examination of the bodies. And point number 10 says, we have learned that Congressman John F. Kennedy, Democrat of Massachusetts, has learned of the recovery from, he was briefed during a flight from Washington to Boston by a staff member of the Secretary of the Air Force. And that's the point at which John Kennedy became a person to be watched. He was on the watch list because in the context of the IPU report, he should not have learned about that. He was not supposed to be in the loop, but because Congressman Kennedy, the son, and you know what? They cite his father more eminently in this report. They say Congressman John F. Kennedy, Democrat of Massachusetts, son of Joseph P. Kennedy, member of the Commission for the Reorganization of the Government. Imagine that. Listen to what we just found out in that little sentence.
Well, I like that,
Yes.
in charge of the reorganization of the government.
Exactly.
It's
That was a
scary.
huge event because what we're talking about is the transition from World War II into the Cold War period, into the UFO period, and this is the reorganization of the government that he's referring to, or the memo refers to, is the integration of CIA and National Security Council into government, the splitting of the Department of the Army into Department of the Air Force and Department of the Army, and the establishment of the national security state. That's what the reorganization of the government involved. Now, I'd like to say that at the time that this was happening, this was the Truman era, during which this memo was written. And so what was called the War Department was becoming the Department of Defense. And the retooling of the military-industrial complex was beginning, from the old tooling of World War II to what we foresaw as the military-industrial necessities of the atomic age and the jet age, as it was also called. So he was a suspect. Let me just put it plainly to you. John F. Kennedy was a Navy man. He was a member of the Office of Naval Intelligence. That was his work. He wasn't out torpedoing cruisers like you see in the John Wayne movie. He was skulking about in the dark in a PT boat, which was a stealth craft of the time. And he was operating on Guadalcanal. And a lot of people don't realize the significance of that. Kennedy suffered in the war. I mean, he saw the dying, the wounding, the killing, and the horrors of World War II during the battles that took place in Guadalcanal. So he was a man who was down there, with the grunts. He was just a lieutenant. And he didn't appreciate wasting lives. And there's another fantastic thing I'm about to tell you. Guadalcanal is historically one of the longest-standing UFO phenomena sites that I know of. A few years ago, 7 years ago, I read a story about a UFO, a menacing UFO that has terrorized the people of Guadalcanal for 100 years. That's how long the Guadalcanalese people have recorded the legend of the dragonfish. The dragonfish is this bright light that comes out of the waters of northern Guadalcanal, is seen to travel inland. To the northern part of Guadalcanal has a few hills or mountains, and it nests there, and then it comes back. And fishermen who have tried to follow it have been attacked by it and burned by it. In many ways, like the Marfa Lights in Texas. The Marfa Lights, some people who have gone walking out into that plain where the Marfa Lights appear have wound up chased and burned by them. So it is a little bit of a menace. So I believe that John F. Kennedy, having been on Guadalcanal, having been stationed there, and knowing, and his patrol route was up there in the northern region of Guadalcanal, where they had the pass that he had to monitor to watch for the troop transport movements of Japanese troops that were coming down trying to resupply the Japanese in the Solomon Islands. So that's John F. Kennedy. So I believe that John F. Kennedy may well have seen this phenomenon firsthand in Guadalcanal and had a curiosity, then briefed in 1947, and throughout the 1950s, when he was in Congress, he was a thorn in the side of the United States Air Force, because he kept demanding information on UFOs along with a certain group of senators that demanded disclosure. So when he became president...
Hey, can I ask a question?
Sure.
So in the middle of all of this, wasn't Eisenhower in charge at some point, or was that after all of this?
No, Eisenhower... So, okay,
because didn't he have a whole bunch of stuff to do with UFOs too?
Sure. Eisenhower is said to have had a meeting at Holloman Air Force Base with the Greys, and that he had to negotiate an understanding with the Greys that allowed them a sphere of influence, you might say, a sphere of operation, where they could operate to do their thing over certain regions of the United States. The Greys apparently, obviously, seem to have a great interest in genetics. I believe that they are a degenerate race. Fallen angels is a good term for them. They screwed up somewhere in their past, and they lost the majority of their females. And so they have to propagate by hybridization and hope to keep their race going in some fashion by using earth women and cows as matrices for the matrix, the wombs, the cows, that they are doing genetic experimentation, hybridization, and they need to do it for whatever purpose, abstruse. I believe it's to keep their race going. And the other belief I have is they are non-human, and they are jealous of us humans because they are intelligent and they are animate, but they are not alive in the same sense that we are alive. We are alive, we are animate, we're intelligent, and we have souls. And they crave having a soul. And so leeching soul energy from human beings, they're very parasitic. The whole legend of the vampire from time immemorial.
Can you explain that? What you mean by, they don't have souls?
They covet a special quality that we call soul, and the human soul is the intermediary between the material and the spiritual. The spiritual and the material cannot come into direct contact with each other. And so the psychic realm, the soul realm, is the bridge between spiritual and material. And that is the really incredible power of the human being, is that we live in a material body. We can affect the material world. We can change it, move it, alter it, direct it, and we can also communicate with the highest level of intelligence in the universe, which is the Godhead. And they are cut off from something by the lack of a soul. And what they want to do is get a soul. But at the same time, they need soul energy. Do you know there are some people that believe that UFOs may actually be powered powered not by nuclear energy, but by human soul energy?
I have heard that, and
Yeah.
have made some commentary, because I believe that, extraterrestrials have been here for a very long time, and wonder if the whole idea of agriculture and the creation of civilization, one of the outcomes
Yes.
of that is that we have chosen to live in cities. And in our living in cities, we have created situations of conflict and strife and negativity. And if they're feeding off of that negative energy, what a better place than we made these self-made pens to put ourselves into.
Well,
for
let
them
me
to
go.
eat
Let
off
me
of.
go. Let me go one step back.
Okay.
Why did we become urbanized? Why did we congregate in cities? I think it was for self-defense. I think it was, there is strength and security in numbers. And while we, let's call it overpopulation, we take a huge population from the countryside and we urbanize it, we create a town. This creates closer intimacy, rubbing elbows the wrong way. And as you said, we created this very strained social structure. But perhaps the reason for suffering a strained social structure and living in it, despite its flaws, is better than being prey to this unseen menace that victimizes human beings. And that's, I have no sympathy or for gray behavior. I don't rationalize it. I don't say they're space brothers. I'm an American. I'm a human being. I have my human rights and myself, and no one has the right to violate that, no matter how much smarter than they may be. Like, they're wiser than we are. They must know what they're doing. No, they may be smarter, but apparently I don't think they're wiser. Otherwise, they wouldn't be in the fix that they're in. They're manipulative. They're vindictive and very deceptive. They can read your mind, and from understanding what you believe, concoct a palatable lie. They can spin, but they spin inside your head.
But if they can't connect to, higher levels of vibration, then they can't connect to source energy, and maybe that's why they're so stuck.
Exactly.
And can't move, and have to move forward in a very intellectual way, and not in a place, that comes from revelation.
Sure. Well, you know what we're dealing with. We have mankind has been dealing with the same reality since he emerged into consciousness, self-consciousness, and I don't believe that reality changes, that radically. I think the reality of the prehistoric man is basically the same world we live in. But the vocabulary, the jargon that man has used to describe his interaction with these different phenomena has evolved too. Now we feel comfortable by talking about science and saying it's an extraterrestrial, rather than saying, "Hey, man, that thing was a vampire," or the person who says it's an extraterrestrial seems a little more intelligent, elevated, smarter, then the person says, oh, that was a vampire. Because the person who believes it was a vampire is thought to be superstitious, you see? So that person is labeled superstitious, but, scientists who may talk about extraterrestrials, they're not as superstitious. But it's just another word, another label, trying to explain the same phenomenon. So the problem is language. And right now, I'll pitch a little bit toward UFO
Okay,
Digest,
and then I have a
where
question
you get
from
a
the chat
huge,
for you.
yeah. So, okay, you want to give it a question
Sure.
for the chat room?
Sure. And so this is from Analog Hole, and he asks, what is your take on the theory, and then it says, based on our trends of current society, that grays are possibly cybernetic beings and are needing humans to revert back to a prior evolutionary state?
That's as good a description of what they may be doing as any. They are trying. See, I think that they are trying to repair. I think, honestly, they're trying to repair something, and we human beings are trying to repair something. The thing we're trying to repair is we're trying to reconstitute the Adamic genome. The Adamic genome was perfect. It was self-sufficient. It was designed to live forever. Something contaminated the Adamic line. And I believe that the symbol is Eve and the serpent. And the branching off of two races. Cain was not Adam's son. Cain was the son of the serpent. And this created two strains of humanity that began two lines. And then there was interbreeding and variation. I would like to recommend to anyone who's really interested in this subject to read the Book of Enoch, because what I've just told you about in psychological terms about modern ET state of genetics and their desire to get us all, and our ability to communicate with God, and they cannot. It comes from the Book of Enoch. The fallen angels make a bond. They are very far from heaven, and they make a bond amongst each other to take women to wives, earth women. Apparently they felt lonely. They were immortal. They had a direct line of communication with God, which they did not know was 24/7. For some reason, when they got to earth and they were far removed from the celestial presence, they thought God couldn't hear them, as a lot of people think as well. God hears everything. It's connected to everything. It's the superintelligence that governs, the universe. So these angels took to wives, and they engendered offspring, which were very tyrannical. And these were giants, and they were smarter and faster and more ferocious and vicious than little human beings. And the human beings prayed to God and asked him for help, because these entities, the sons of the Watchers, had become so powerful and so arrogant that they looked down upon mankind as a lower animal and had begun to eat mankind. And so Enoch is delegated to ask God to help. So he goes to God and asks him for help. And so God sends Michael, Gabriel, Raphael, and Phanuel to earth to reestablish order, to rein in the children of the Watchers, and to discipline the Watchers, to punish them. So they seize the Watchers. The principal ones are Azazel and Samyaza. Samyaza is the same name that's used by the ET that speaks to Billy Meyer, by the way. And so they round them up, and it's said that they were buried. They buried them deep underground in the Middle East, somewhere, Iraq. This is where all of this stuff, Sumer, is supposed to have happened. So Michael is directed by God to lead the children of the Watchers into wars against each other, to protect mankind, but to lead the children of the Watchers into destroying each other, but to protect the human remnant. Now, when the angels did this deed, when they had sex with earth women to produce progeny, something happened to them. their consciousness changed. And there is an incredible chapter in the Book of Enoch, which is the wails, the cries and lamentations of the angels when they realized that by sinning, they were supposed to remain intact. They were not supposed to mix their seed. When they did so, something was altered in them, and they immediately felt the loss of consciousness. The loss of consciousness was the cutting off of their consciousness from direct communication with the Godhead. Namely, they lost their souls, because it was the soul they had made it possible for them to be in communion with God all the time, whether they knew it or not. But only when they sinned and lost it did they lose the faculty and realize that they were all alone in the material universe, cut off from direct communication with God, and they had to find their way out of this. In the meantime, there's a wonderful passage that Enoch, the angels go to Enoch. The fallen angels go to Enoch and say, angels, they're moaning and lamenting and crying and wailing like drug addicts going through withdrawal. And that's what loss of the Godhead must be like, worse than heroin or cocaine or methadone withdrawal. It must be the worst thing in the universe to have lost God. So they go to Enoch and they say, Enoch, please help us go and petition God to forgive us. And the judgment of God is incredible. And his first words say it all. Enoch goes and petitions that God forgive the watchers. And God says to them, go back and tell the watchers that they should have been here petitioning on behalf of man, not man petitioning on behalf of them. No, they will not be forgiven. They will be condemned. And then he goes into the description of how they are to be handled, bound and chained and buried beneath the earth, facing up. The angels, the fallen angels, are to be buried by Michael the archangel and Gabriel the archangel and Phanuel and Raphael, bound, tied, and buried facing up so they can see all the destruction and the evil that they've done to the world and to watch their progeny destroy itself. That's, in a nutshell.
But that's kind of sad.
It's kind of sad, but that's where we're facing now.
But it's also kind of sad that, we think of God as being loving and forgiving, but then you hear stories like that, and that's not what happens.
Well, you have to consider the magnitude. You have to consider the magnitude of the offense. God had something going, the Creator had something going here on planet Earth that was supposed to develop very naturally and beautifully, and they changed the direction. They infused. Here are the things that they gave forbidden knowledge to human beings through the wives they took, and they taught them metallurgy for making weapons and swords. They taught them astronomy, astrology, the casting of spells, the uses of herbs for
all kinds of stuff,
poison, all kinds of stuff, and all of it, it perverted man. Basically, is what the message is. For example, cosmetics is one of the things they taught, and that created more vanity and more competition. And so the offense was very great. And now here, let me tell you, as long as we've gotten very mystical, how that relates to the Christ. I said that we here on earth, men, humans, women, human beings, we are trying to repair. We are evolving. We're repairing the perfect genetic imprint that God put in the Adamic genome. And I believe that the purpose of Christ, the man Jesus, brought the Christ. And the Christ was the reconstitution of the perfect human being, genetically speaking, that conferred upon Jesus the entire birthright that we have as humans, the potential that we have. And so I view humans, as eggs that have not yet hatched. There is a higher purpose. We know that a caterpillar goes into a pupa stage and a larva stage and then comes out as a butterfly. That's death. That pupa chrysalis stage is the coffin. It's the dead caterpillars in there. But something is alive, and it transmogrifies a worm into a butterfly or a moth.
All right, so
Now,
I'm going to take this into a slightly different direction, but kind of staying on point with where you're going.
sure. Go ahead.
But it seems like the powers that be, if that is the case of what's going on, that the powers that be don't want us to make that transition, that they want us to stay where they are or kill us off, one or the other, by the things that happen in society. In the next hour, we're going to be talking a lot about GMOs and plants and agriculture, but there's a whole bunch of stuff that is going on that it seems like, it's either the government or big business has their hand in that tries to keep us from getting to that place.
I'm glad you mentioned this because I completely agree. The powers that be, governments, want to limit the awareness and the consciousness of human beings to reduce them to just functional elements of a machine society, very much like workers in an ant colony. You have the workers, you have the majors, and then you have the queen. And so I believe that this is what they are trying to do. You can. I'm sure you can be queen. You just have to start your own colony. So anyway, to get back to this point, I believe that the Roswell crash may have been intentional on the part of the aliens, like a Trojan horse, which gets back to the reorganization of the government. They dropped a treasure trove of gadgetry in the desert. And I'm saying, like, sacrificed it. They just crashed it. They didn't come back and recover anything. They knew we'd find it. And the reason was that they want to transform our consciousness to be more bug-like in organization like they are than humans as we were in that era. And how is this happening? How is this done?
They're doing a good job.
Well, here's how they did it. They dropped the microchips. They dropped the fiber optics. They dropped the flying saucer and zero-point energy on us, knowing that human beings are so curious, we'd want to know how it works, and we'd want to make some of our own. Now, in the process of analyzing these, let's say a microchip, in 1947, we were incapable of making a microchip. How do you make a microchip? You have to retool your whole society. Your industrial base has to be refashioned from top to bottom to produce that chip. You have to start finding rare earth materials. You have to find gold and other precious metals. You have to make robots to be able to create these circuits. It's quite a thing. But in the process of having to retool ourselves to make these gadgets, we retooled our brains and our social structure to act more like bugs, more like an ant colony than anything else. And even sociologists and anthropologists and science sort of conspired with this new paradigm to the point where a man named E.O. Wilson, a biologist at Harvard, wrote a book called The Ants, a famous book back in the 70s, 80s. And the book became greatly admired. His love of the ant and how ants organize their society comes through the book. And all of a sudden people start reading the book and saying, gee, shouldn't we be more like ants? We'd be so much more efficient. We ought to give it a try. And I believe that kind of social engineering is what's led us to this society. And I warn people about it. Now, the point you brought out about all these bad elements in our environment leading to depopulation, I have a word for this. You see, these things are things that have been seen before, but they weren't recognized in time. And this is what I call slow genocide. What Americans are suffering is a slow genocide, a very slow culling of our population. Old people, the people who are exposed to these toxic materials. Let me say something about Obamacare, and the economics of Obamacare. I've analyzed that. The only way that Obamacare could work is to maximize the profit and cut the costs. I think everyone would agree with me on any business that that's really how it works, right? Maximize the profits, cut the costs. In Obamacare, maximizing the profit is enlisting and enslaving young people to pay twice, 3 times more than they need to at a time when they really don't need medical care as often as elders do, and then to cut the costs. What's the cost? The great cost of elderly care. And these two things are already in the mill. The second part, which, how do you cut the costs in taking care of the elderly? I'll tell you one way that I've seen already. Obamacare says that people over 76 who come down with cancer will not be given the prime medical cancer treatment because they are in their equation. To them, people are just numbers and values and dollar signs. In their equation, prolonging the life of a 76-year-old person is not a good return. It costs too much to treat them, and they will not work, they will not pay taxes, and they will not give a return. However, that person already gave 76 years of their lives to the system. They're entitled, I believe that they're entitled to die with dignity and a higher quality of life. However, these number crunchers, these bureaucrats who only see spreadsheets, they see human beings as numbers and not as people. Now
I think if I was 76, I don't know that I would want to put myself, even today, I don't know that I'd want to put myself through chemo or some of the other.
Well, I agree. Well, listen. I agree. That's an individual choice. Whether it's chemo, whether it's going to Rome and being treated by Dr. Tullio Simoncini, who cures cancer with bicarbonate of soda. My friends, they're really great alternatives. And a Roman doctor, an oncologist with 25, 30 years of experience says, you know something? I've never seen a cancer that wasn't full of fungus. And now I think the fungus is not the symptom, but the fungus is the cause. So he started treating cancer tumors with bicarbonate of soda, injecting it into the tumor to kill the fungus. The fungus is killed and the tumor receded. There's a huge industry, a big profit industry in maintaining cancer rates up and maintaining cancer therapies. However, that whole paradigm is on the rocks because Obamacare is throwing everything into a grinder that's producing something that none of us foresaw. I really believe it's treasonous. What I see in the Obamacare bill is the architecture of a complete tyranny, and a socialist tyranny at that. By taking over your medical care, they are taking over every aspect of your life. Obamacare says they'll be able to come to your house to do assessments of your mental competency. They'll be able to come inspect your house to see that that you are not psychologically impaired or a threat to society. You're going to have to visit doctors a certain number of times to be checked. The Obamacare bill, if you read it now and type in the find or search section of your PDF, type in dental surveillance. They mention dental surveillance 20 times. The worst thing is the microchip that's hidden in the bill. Everybody's heard about it. Mm-hmm. People are suspicious. Nobody reads the bill. Remember? Nancy Pelosi didn't read the bill. She said, we got to pass it to know what's in it. What kind of insane people would do such a thing to themselves? What kind of a society would pass a law?
And it's not like they don't have a staff that they can split it up.
Right,
and, each person read a
right,
section.
Right. So The point is that the chip is in there, but it's hidden in a paragraph that cross-references the Obamacare bill to the Food, Drug, and Cosmetic Act of 1996. And so while the chip is not explicitly mentioned in the Obamacare bill, the National Medical Registry database is, and everybody has to be put in it. So the scheme is to issue a credit card type RFID chip on the credit card, and then to habituate, to get people accustomed to this new method. They will then do a bracelet. Why is that habituation? Because it's less threatening than a microchip right away, and it's more familiar. When you go to a hospital or a clinic, they put a bracelet with your name and your blood type on it, a certain number of vitals, so that if you should pass out, they know who you are, what your problem was, why you came in. Well, having gotten used to that idea that you wear this bracelet when you go to a clinic or a hospital, the next stage is to introduce the identity chip on a bracelet. Oh, we'll get used to it, just like we got used to wristwatches. You see? But the next part is about the funding of the VeriChip. That's the name of the company, Veri, V-E-R-I, chip. VeriChip is the most advanced company in this kind of technology, and that's where Food, Drug, and Cosmetic Act of 1996, Section 519G, cites the cooperation between the government and this corporation to develop the chip, the government offering research money on the condition that the government gets first dibs on the chip. Now, the chip has already been tested. It was started testing in 1992 under the most passionate, compassionate, kind, and loving concept. Don't lose your pet. Don't lose your dog. Don't lose your cat. Right? So let's put this locator GPS chip. We'll put a chip in between the shoulder blades, and you'll never lose your pet. Yes, you do lose your pet. Your pet dies from cancerous tumors that spread out through the spine because microchips are made of toxic materials that the human being, human flesh, cannot tolerate. So that's what I call slow genocide.
I mean, there are so many things that they do to trick the people. Like, I remember when my kids were in, elementary school, and they had that whole thing, get your children's fingerprints on file so you can have a fingerprint card, because God forbid they are abducted. Now you would have, their fingerprints, and you'd have their DNA, and, you'd be ready to combat the kidnappers.
Yeah.
And I just, and my ex was going to go and do it. And I looked at him and I'm like, are you crazy? I go, now they have your children's fingerprints on file, period.
Well, this microchip thing came from the aliens, right? It was the discovery of implants that led to this application.
You mean like Roger Lear's work, implants?
Yes, Roger. God bless Roger Lear. Rest in peace. He was a very good.
Roger passed?
Yes, he did last month, my dear. I'm very
Oh
sorry.
my God.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
He was a very dear person, and the night he died, I had a marvelous experience. I came home totally tired, totally not able, so tired from the physical aspects of my work, which involve a lot of athletics. I just hit the bed like a log, literally. And suddenly, as I was in my sleep, this brilliant light appeared fluttering all around my bed. And it was, if I can describe it, imagine a brilliant candle that moved around, the candle light without the candle under it. It was really bright and flickering and coming around me. And I couldn't move, but I was saying, hey, come here. I want to talk to you. I want to see you. Who are you? Whoop, whoop. And it came around and zipped me around like Tinkerbell,
Uh-huh.
Like a Tinkerbell spirit. And I kind of, like the times that I met Dr. Lear in Washington, he did have this kind of a sprightly energy, He
was a sweetheart.
Absolutely.
Just a sweetheart.
And I tell you, this is what I felt in this candlelight. That's why I wanted to talk to you. It was really beautiful and luminescent and, teasing me in a way. It was teasing me like, hey, hi, I'm here. So what is this about? And the next day I had two strange experiences in the afternoon. I was standing in my living room, and I felt that somebody touched me very gently on my shoulder, and I turned around expecting to see my friend who lives here, who's very stealthy, very sprightly. And I turned, and there's nobody there. And well, that's strange. And then I walked a few steps, and I was in the same room in another part, and I felt somebody, like in baseball, when somebody comes and pats your butt, you hit a home run, they go, "Hey, good
Huh?
boy, good fella." Well, I felt that, and I thought again, oh, it must be my friend. I don't give names, but it must be her. And I turn around, I'm like, oh, whoa, now what's going on? So I said, something's really strange is going on. I walked over to to my computer and checked my email, and the first email said Dr. Roger Lear has passed away. So I
Wow.
feel that Dr. Roger Lear visited me, and I do have this capacity. I've discussed it before. When you have a kinship with somebody, kinship that involves respect, admiration, fondness, love, and that is felt, it is personally, I have died the deaths that people were undergoing. And the most powerful one that I ever experienced was the death of Ronald Reagan. Perhaps we can do another show sometime about this kind of thing. But I'll tell you
That'll be
this.
pretty fun.
Yeah, I'll tell you this. The people I love come back to see me. I've been touched by ghosts. I've communed with ghosts. They've saved my lives. They've come to warn me when I was on an errant path and redirected me. Ghosts have guided me throughout my life. And it's a faculty that we all have, and it's a very important one. So let me just finish by saying that the love between people, and even people and animals, when that bond is that great, it is not severed by the death of the body. And then you have an ally on the other side of life. And I have many there. So the people have visited me as they're dying. I've died their deaths with them. Let me just give you one to finish off. Person that I
We
really
still have about
admired.
5 minutes.
Oh,
So,
okay.
yeah.
This is really sweet one. I met Christopher Reeves in 1976 when he was filming Superman. I went down to the Daily Planet building, which was the Daily News building where I worked at that time, and I watched the shooting of it, and we saw each other eye to eye, and we made eye contact, and I'm not I'm somebody to run up and ask for autographs, but we make the connection. So throughout his career, throughout his life, I admired his work for many reasons, besides the gentleness of his soul, the and the courage that he exhibited after that terrible accident. But one night, let me say something else. I have a picture of Superman, Christopher Reeves, in my bedroom that my brother gave me back in 1978 when he took off for Seattle. He had a beautiful glossy studio print of it, and I've hung it up there, and it's always there. When I wake up, I see there Superman trying to save the world, Christopher Reeves, good model. So he's always around. So one night, I have this dream that I am on my back, and I'm flying. But I'm flying downward and backwards into a volcano and into the caldera. And I'm saying, no, I don't want to fly this way. I want to fly up. I want to fly up. And I couldn't move. I was like locked in with my arms at my side, and I was flying backwards. And I could see that I was sinking into this volcano, and then so deep that the rim of the volcano appeared above me as a black circle, and I could just see that patch of sky. And I, Robert, who is relating this story to you, was saying to myself, oh my God, what am I going through? What does this mean? Who is this? Why am I here? And the next morning, I woke up to find out that Christopher Reeves had died that night. And as you know, he was paralyzed. He was kept in a certain kind of bed that had mattresses on the front and mattresses on the bottom, and flipped him over right top to bottom so that he could get circulation. But he ultimately died of bed sores from that very machine. And he had died that night, paralyzed on his back. and he slipped into the afterlife. And my soul felt it. I lived it. I understood it. And another time I'll tell you about the night Ronald Reagan, the most courageous man imaginable. He fought death till the last breath of his life. And I know it because I lived it. I woke up the next morning to find out that Ronald Reagan had died of pneumonia and complications from pneumonia. But we're all connected, folks. You can't die. You can't die. Get over it. Stop worrying about that. Yes, this robot made of meat that we wear can die, but who you really
And
are
cannot.
cannot.
When you have a really clear understanding of, the nature of the soul and the nature of, our existence on Earth, you miss the people that pass, but it's just different. There isn't this, oh, I'm never going to see them again. Or, I have people come visit me all the time also, and I love it, or I have conversations with them and, and,
Exactly.
and
the people that love you still love you and care about you, and they are watching and guarding you. Just that simple. Let me tell you how I know.
You got 2 minutes.
Okay, I've had more than 2 death experiences. I was dying and leaving my body and rose out of it and saw the light, and then I asked God, I'm not afraid to die. I just don't want to die here in this room in front of this child. That's what was happening. I was dying, and there was a child of 3 years old in the room. And I said, Lord, if I die here, I'll drop a body. These ladies will go hysterical. This poor girl will be traumatized for the rest of her life. God, not for me, for the little girl. I don't want to die here. I'll go another way. And with that prayer, my soul dropped back into my body. And actually, I'm saying dropped in because it was rising and out of my body. And I felt at one point that my hair was inside me as I was leaving, and I saw the light. And the light was overwhelming and coming in. And I said, Lord, I don't want to die in front of this child. Please. And with that, I came back in, and the lady who was watching me die was in shock. She saw the whole thing. She saw my soul leaving, and she saw me slip into balance. And I started doing Tai Chi when I felt I was going to pass out. So that rooted me and pulled my soul back into my body. Many more details to tell about the death process that I could give another time, but I think that that is good for tonight.
Well, okay.
I
think. Do you invite people to contact you? I know, the webpage that you are, involved with is ufodigest.com.
Right.
But
yeah, well, I have Facebook. And I'm sorry I can't take any more so-called friends. You're all my friends, but there's a place for following. So, and you can contact me. I talk to people. I try to be of service to people, and I counsel people around the world. I'm working with a group of people in Alaska now who are all hearing voices in their heads telling them very strange things, and that's incessant. And this is a constant phenomenon that we're hearing, like from the guy who shot up the Navy Yard, that the former Navy man who went in and shot up the Washington Navy Yard. He said he was moving from hotel to hotel trying to escape these voices in his head. Well, there's a whole group
government
of
or
people
ETs.
Yes, either or both.
Doesn't matter.
That's it. You know that the government comes in and tries. Often they'll take a real abductee, they'll snatch him or her and debrief them, sodium pentothal or hypnosis, and get all the real information. And then to prevent the real information from going to the public or their relatives, they'll stage another abduction theatrically to overlay that one over the real one, so the person is totally confused as to what really happened. And this comes from Larry Warren at Rendlesham Forest. He feels that that was done to him. He had a real ET experience. He was really abducted. The Air Force found out. They took him in a room. They threw him in there with a bunch of men in black, coerced him, debriefed him, gave him drugs, sodium pentothal. And then he says something else happened and another alien came in, and he feels that they were staging a fake alien abduction to suppress the memory of the real alien abduction. And I've heard that more than one time.
Robert, we need to go because the music is going to be coming up. Thank you so much for coming on. Wonderful
Pleasure.
Conversation. Love to have you back. And
Thank you.
I will talk to you again soon.
Thank you very much. Nice to have spoken with you. Good night.
Good night. That's Robert Morningstar. His webpage is ufodigest.com. And we will be back with Richard Allen Miller after these words from our sponsors.
Just Energy Radio with your host, Dr. Rita Louise, will return right after these messages.